Hi! For this course, we will be tackling about Haccp, or the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. The points of discussion will be the following: Haccp Introduction, Haccp Preliminary Steps, and Haccp Principles. So what is Haccp? The Codex Alimentarius Commission, or the CAC, defines Haccp as a system which identifies, evaluates, and controls hazards which are significant for food safety. It was developed by Pillsbury Company in association with NASA and the U.S. Army in response to the needs of the space program in the early 1960s. In 1973, it was first used as a concept and basis for low-acid and acidified canned food regulations. Today, it is now a recognized system for food safety in both national and international regulations. What are the 5 preliminary steps of Haccp? First, the Haccp Team Assembly. This is where we are including representatives from different process activities such as receiving, maintenance, storage, and dispatch, for example. Representatives from different groups such as quality assurance, quality control, engineering, and management are also included here. Lastly, this is where we are defining the scope of our Haccp plan. The second step is the description of product. This is where we are describing the processing requirements, such as, for example, storage temperature, and the product characteristics that are necessary for the evaluation of hazards, such as water activity and pH, for example. The processing factors, such as heat treatment and chemical agents, are also being described here. The third step is the identification of the intended use. This is where we are defining the group of consumers. Is it for the elderly, children, or is it intended for a fast food chain? Fourth, the construction of flow diagram. This is where we create a flow diagram of the process for which the Haccp plan will be applied. A flow diagram is defined as a systematic representation of the sequence of steps or operations used in the manufacture of product. The on-site confirmation of the flow diagram is the last step, in which the Haccp team must make an on-site evaluation of the flow diagram to confirm that it is complete and accurate. What are the 7 principles of Haccp? Principle 1 is the conduct of hazard analysis. This is where we assess hazards associated with the growing, harvesting, raw material and ingredient processing, manufacturing, distribution, marketing, preparation, and consumption of food. The biological, chemical, and physical agents in the food that can cause adverse health effects are also being defined here. This is also where we are defining the criteria for identifying hazards, evaluation of hazards with regards to potential risks and significance of its occurrence, such as high, medium, or low risk. For the principle 2, this is where we are now identifying the critical control point, or the CCP. A CCP is defined as any point in the chain of food production from raw materials to finished product where the loss of control could result in an unacceptable food safety risk. The principle 3 is where we are now establishing the critical limits at each CCP. A critical limit is defined as a control parameter that is required to ensure that the product is safe. The principle 4 involves the establishment of monitoring procedures for critical limits. Monitoring is defined as the act of conducting a planned sequence of observations or measurements of control parameters to assess whether a CCP is under control. One example is control chart, in which we have an established schedule of monitoring. The Principle 5 involves the establishment of corrective actions. It is where we establish corrective action to be taken when there is a deviation identified by monitoring of a CCP. A deviation, it is a failure to meet a critical limit. For the Principle 6, this is now where we are establishing the procedures for verification. This confirms that all the defined requirements of the Haccp plan are being performed to provide a safe product. So how do we verify? We review the consumer complaints that relates to food safety. We evaluate the end product. We do in-process testing. We review the Haccp records. And we verify the preliminary steps and prerequisite programs. The last principle, the Principle 7, which is the establishment of documentation and record keeping. Records must be available to provide objective proof that CCPs have been controlled. So, examples, CCP monitoring activities, deviation and corrective actions, and modification of the Haccp system records. Haccp is not a standalone system. The prerequisite programs, or PRPs, are practices and conditions needed prior to and during the implementation of Haccp and which are essential for food safety. The examples of prerequisite programs are Sanitation Standard Operating Procedure, Standard Operating Procedure, Good Manufacturing Practices, and Internal Auditing. For some organizations, Good Manufacturing Practices or GMP may be equivalent to Good Warehousing Practices or GWP and Good Distribution Practices or GDP. Are you now ready to get your facility Haccp certified? If yes, please visit www.interlinkiq.com or www.itblaster.com. You may also email your inquiries at services@interlinkiq.com and enterprise@interlinkiq.com.